Hello, and welcome to the Other Minds podcast. I'm Joseph Bohikian. That was an excerpt of Face It by Lauren Newton and Joëlle Léandre. Other Minds, founded in 1993 in San Francisco by Charles Amirkhanian and Jim Newman, is devoted to championing the most original voices in new and experimental music. On this season of the podcast, we're talking with the featured composers from our 26th Other Minds Festival, which will take place on October 13th to 15th, 2022 at the Great Star Theater in San Francisco. Today I'll be talking with Lauren Newton, who will perform in duo with Joëlle Léandre at Other Minds 26 next month. Newton has gained recognition in both the jazz and avant-garde music scenes through her vocal practice, expanding her range of voice techniques without using words, focusing primarily on vocal expression. She has performed in the US, South Korea, India, Japan, and throughout Europe, and has received the annual German Record Critics Award and the Lifetime Achievement Award from the state of Baden-Württemberg, Germany. Her own projects have included compositions for music and theater productions, small and large ensembles, choirs, and radio plays. Welcome to the podcast, Lauren.
Thank you, Joey. Glad to be here.
So you're very active in Germany now where you live, but you're originally from Oregon. How did you end up living in Germany, and what's exciting to you about the music scene there?
During my last bachelor year at the U of O, there was a study abroad program being offered, and my vocal professor, Neil Wilson, was going to lead that particular group in the following year. And so I was able to scrape some money together and go over with the group, and we stayed there for 2 semesters, about 3/4 of a year. And during that time, we were able to be in an area around Stuttgart where there's a lot of music going on, famous dance theater music in the form of plays and operas and all that, and of course classical concerts, and there's a jazz scene there and so on. And so I, snooped around and got to know some people. At the same time I was studying, I decided to experiment a little bit with my voice and kept trying to find out if there were compositions without words, which there are very few, and decided then to stay on after that year in Germany, and ended up doing my master's degree at the university there in Stuttgart, where I met a lot of young composers, would-be composers to be. And I would ask them to write pieces without words, please, which was a very strange question for most people who, write for singers because they can sing with words. Anyway, and then at the same time, I got hooked into the jazz scene and was able to join a group that did a kind of a rock jazz music. At that time, it was called rock jazz. And it was so funny because when the guy asked me if I wanted to come to a rehearsal, and then after the rehearsal, he said, "Hey, you need to stay on. We like your voice," and so on. And I said, "Yeah, but I don't write lyrics." And he said, "Oh, that's okay. You could just sing the trumpet part or the sax part or whatever." And so I did that with the melodies that were written. And then the rest of it was improvisation, free improvisation, which I had never done really before. And it was a big opportunity for me to really experiment with the voice. And we did a lot of traveling around, club gigs all over Germany and in Austria and Switzerland. And that's how it started. People just kind of got to know me as the singer who could read music and do strange things with her voice. So that's how it's been ever since. It just continues. And most of what I'm doing now is free improvisation, though I did a lot of compositional works from musicians, often jazz musicians who wrote for orchestra and soprano, and who knew my inclinings and would somehow, incorporate that into the piece. So I was I was reading texts and I was improvising without words. In the mid-90s, when I was in Paris doing a concert with a Swiss drummer, Fritz Hauser, Joëlle came to the concert just to hear. She knew Fritz and she came to hear, and then she heard me. And after the concert, she came up to me and said, "Wow, we need to do something together." So our first meeting was just like a little jam session. She lives in Paris and I live here in Germany, but she came to visit me. It was her base, and we just hit it off immediately. We understood each other's musical language and felt very comfortable with each other, with, being in the music and being able to be ourselves at the same time. We're two completely different personalities and musicians, of course, but that was exactly what was so interesting about it. We were able to go off on a tangent and then meet again. And it seemed to all make sense to us. Anyway, since then we've been working together and here we are at this festival. So
Great. And for the uninitiated, could you explain what kind of improvisation you do? Right, you're not like necessarily reading chord changes in your improvisations with Joëlle. Right? It's more of a free improvisation.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Yeah, the free improvisation where communicating is extremely important, not only with each other but with the audience, of course. And we're both very passionate about what we're doing. So it comes over not as totally serious music, and it is to us, it's serious. But once you get, at least from the way I see it, once you get away from written notes and out into this area, and once you get out there, it can only be responsible for yourself, as in life. And so we know about that particular aspect, and we also know about the aspect of wanting to make a really interesting music together. And interesting is, of course, subjective. Everything we do is subjective, but at the same time, we know how to make music. I wouldn't even say make music. We know how to follow that musical stream of consciousness, so to speak. And since we're both practiced musicians, we both studied classical music, we know how to handle our instruments. So if something pops into our mind that we think would fit well at that moment, then there it is. And we have the possibility of choosing to use it or not, but usually it's a very intuitive thing. And that's what makes it exciting for us. And I think that's what makes it exciting for the audience, because they never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Speaking of the audience, I think you mentioned something about you interact with the audience in a way. Can you expand on what you mean by that?
Well, the interacting is kind of on an intuitive and emotional level. If you want to go in the direction of entertainment as far as humor goes, I think it's just humorous. The human voice is humorous in the first place. Depends on what you do with it, of course. But, and like I say, we're focused on music. But gee, when something comes out of my mouth, sometimes I think, whoa, that's kind of weird. Because it might be something that begins with a sound that would normally happen when you're talking to someone, like or something, some kind of strange, just a sound that accentuates whatever it is you do. And I like to take those sounds and turn them around and listen for the music in them, so that they become a part of the music and don't remain in that everyday kind of usage formula. Yeah. And I don't want to tell too much here because I want the audience to come and listen. But sometimes it's quite humorous, though I don't particularly like to stay in that vein. And Joëlle is also a humorous person. And sometimes she'll use her voice. She'll meet me with her voice and the bass. And things really get going. And sometimes it's pretty hilarious. But it's not something we plan. Like I say, it comes out of something that just happens instantaneously. And of course, this music is emotional, but we're not trying to tell a story in that sense. We're not trying to tell how ugly the world is or how fantastic I feel right now. It all comes out of a much deeper comes from a much deeper level in each of us. And that meets at that level, that music meets at that level. And then it kind of starts flowering. And we love that. It's a passion. It's a real passion for both of us to be able to do this and have people listen and be interested.
You mentioned something about taking sounds out of their normal context, maybe in terms of speech. Is that what drew you to singing without words, that you could take those sounds and explore them for what they sound like themselves?
I think it has to do with meaning. Words are laden with meaning. And when you sing a jazz standard or you sing, certain texts, there is a meaning behind them. And this meaning should be, transmitted, communicated to the audience, because that's what the composer wants. But there was a point when I felt I understand the theme of what is meant, but the way I would say it would be like this, and then no words. Because for some things, as you all know, some things cannot be explained in words. We know the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I wouldn't say that. Well, I would say it okay, and in a kind of a way that you know what I mean. It's just impossible to have enough words that would explain something that you feel in that moment, because the moment is then gone. Yeah. So using the voice in this way, it gives me instantaneous access to that particular feeling. And for me, that seemed much more close to what an instrumentalist does. Let's say a jazz instrumentalist who has played the theme, and then takes a solo, as it's called. He doesn't use words, but a good soloist, a good jazz soloist, can transport that meaning with just his notes and the way he plays her notes. I can say his, her. And that is also close to what interpretation is of a classical piece of music. If the soloist is really good and knows how to use that inner voice to translate what the composer is trying to put in little black dots on the paper, then the message gets across so much deeper and with so much more intention. Yeah. So that's the level on which I was dwelling and trying to make sense of, and it would be something that would help me to get across what I'm feeling, what I'm doing. So that takes a lot of practice, of course. Usually practice with other people is much more fun, and one learns a lot more that way. But of course, a lot of solo work I've done. Both of us, Joëlle does a lot of solo work too.
Let's listen now to an excerpt of Face It by Lauren Newton and Joëlle Léandre, released on Leo Records. That was an excerpt of Face It by Lauren Newton and Joëlle Léandre. One of your recent projects has been a collaboration with Myra Melford, who Other Minds audiences may be familiar with. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, by chance, I was asked by Joëlle to join her and Myra Melford on piano in Warsaw. And I had never played with Myra before. And so I was really excited to meet her, and because I'd heard, of course, about her. And all we did was, it was a festival in Warsaw and in Poland, and we did a sound check and kind of tested each other. So the sound check was, just a short thing, just to get our mics right and have the feeling of being able to hear each other. So it was not really, of course we played together, but it wasn't like being in a concert. It was just kind of more or less checking the microphone. And I thought, well, okay. And then we went on stage after that, and it just exploded. To me, it exploded. It was just amazing how professional these two musicians are with each other. They had played together before. And for me to be between them and feeling that energy going through me, around me, and over to the other person and so on, really fired my imagination, all of our imagination. And it was the concert was recorded, and people were happy with it, and so it became a real CD. And I thought it was fascinating to be in work with Myra because of her way of being powerful and tender at the same time. It's this way of handling the instrument that lets you feel like it's singing to you and expressing something without words. And that's just my language, Of course, Joëlle too, but I've known her for so many years that I just knew kind of almost what she was doing, from moment to moment. So it was a nice juxtaposition of meeting in this kind of a context. So, but that wasn't our last concert. We had a concert last year in Germany and in France, actually, both festivals. And each time the music was completely different. When I say different, I mean musically, the ideas were different that were rolling around. But because of the solidity of each of those musicians, it didn't feel like we were lost at all. It felt like we all were on the same journey, enjoying the ride and loving the sounds that were coming out of us and being able to play ball with them. And, that's how it felt.
You've recently taken on a big project, which was your book, Vocal Adventures. What is that book about, and how did you come to write it?
Yeah, the book is actually about these things that I've been telling you, how it all came about and what was going on in my head was while this voice in me was saying, just improvise. And about meeting all the different musicians that I met. And not only musicians, of course, all the people who were running the clubs and the concert halls and the people writing, reviews and interviewing and the other musicians, of course, many, many, many musicians. And it's about the learning process, actually. And because of that, and I have taught since the late 80s at various universities around Europe, and even in San Francisco, I gave a workshop at the school. But it's about learning to trust yourself. And when the students, young students, studying jazz or classical music, doesn't matter. When you offer courses on free improvisation, what I did from the very beginning, when you offer these classes and they sign up, or they have to take the course in order to get the credit, and then they come in kind of, okay, what am I doing? There's no notes. Where are the notes? Where are the note staves? Where are the dots on the paper? And I'm going, there are no dots. You are the composer. You are the music. And that aspect, which has become clearer and clearer to me as the years went on, is what I'm pointing to. I'm not pointing towards, of course, I've written down or put some exercises in the book to help people get started who've never done any free improvisation. But most of it is about that, working on that kind of, the way of letting your inner voice tell you what the next step is. And this is really important, not just for improvisation. I mean, it's important in life, again. I have to say that again. But I was always happy to be able to teach improvisation, jazz improvisation too. But this particular way of communicating or expressing something that is very personal to you and have it come out in a way that's not banal or ridiculous or comical, have it come out in a really honest way, and at the same time being able to work on your instrument so that those ideas that come out of you come out in a precise way.
Great. And where can people find the book if they're interested in reading it?
Well, actually, it's a small editor and a small company here in Germany. And of course, I'd love people to order it from here. But I think in the States, I've seen it. I checked the other day. It's already on Amazon.
And I think you'll have some with you when you come for the festival, right?
Yes, I'll have a couple with me.
Great. Well, thank you, Lauren, for joining us on the Other Minds podcast. You can hear Lauren Newton and Joëlle Léandre perform at Other Minds 26 on October 14th, 2022 at the Great Star Theater in San Francisco. Thanks for joining me, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you. Come on, come all.
This has been another episode of the Other Minds podcast, brought to you by Other Minds. Our 26th festival is October 13th to 15th, 2022 at the Great Star Theater in San Francisco. Join us again next week for our final episode of Season 1.